G'day folks. Well, over the years we have filmed hundreds of incredibly talented people across the world. Many of these artists have gone on to produce their own videos as well. We hope you enjoy this great lesson from one of our Colour in Your Life artists.
We are going to start here by doing some color picking. I'm just have a simple brush here in Photoshop. It's easier in Photoshop to do this demonstration to show how my eye kind of goes around a scene and analyzes it. So what I do is I ignore the texture, and I chose the melon just because it had quite a bit of texture on it but still had the form. So in nature we're going to deal with this sort of situation quite a bit, and what we need to do is we need to squint down and see how the light is falling on the object rather than all the kind of surface things that are going on it, because those things will cause us to mix a bunch of values and tones that really aren't necessary in order to create a nice sense of light and a solid form. So I'm just going along here painting some of these lights and halftones. There's the soft form edge, so just going along that. Now going into the shadow side, smoothing that out. Now if I do leave some texture, and I will leave some, but it will just be right along the edge between the terminator line, the edge between light and shadow. So if you do have some texture in your painting, look for it there right along that edge, but don't paint it in the general light area and the general shadow area. Alright, just picking a couple colors here to soften it further. Okay, so we've got that really nice soft edge that contrasts, and we're going to throw a little bit of a highlight there. You don't see it much on a dull subject or something that has a lot of texture like this. It's not shiny at all, so you're not going to see much of a highlight. Same thing with a bush or rocks. You're not going to see it. Now you get the sharp edge of the contrast. Now you can see between the edge of the shadow and the light area. Now I'm going to add a little bit of atmosphere around the sides of the melon here. That line back there is not really necessary in order to create that sense of light. Just soften that edge just a little bit. Grab some of the background and deepen the value slightly of that leading edge of the form. That just helps that melon, the light side, back off just a little bit. Now I'm going to add some green, and this is going to just simulate the idea. Say this is a melon sitting in some grass, so kind of your typical outdoor element where you've got this green, that warm green that's being hit by the sun. Now I'm going to change opacity and just lightly put some of that same green color as a reflection up into the melon. So there's our reflected light. So that's our second source of light. Now the third source of light that we need to really think about is the ambient light from the sky. So I'm just going to throw some blue in there as an idea. So that's the blue of the sky. Go back, change opacity, and then just throw in a little bit of that blue lightly. So that's our third source of light, and that will cool and give influence to all the colors in the that are in the shadow that are facing upwards. And then on the cast shadow, further away it goes from the source or the object that's casting it, it's going to get cooler, get some of that blue in it. Soften the edges a little bit of the shadow, but right there you want to keep it crisp. That's the area that you want to soften, so as it goes further away. Now let's go and turn to this scene, landscape scene. So we're going to do the same thing that we did with the melon. We got the light, form edge, shadow, cast shadow. We're going to go in the tree and do the same thing, simplify that area. So if I'm painting this type of scene, this is what I'm looking at, or what I'm doing with my eyes. I'm just squinting down, seeing the big shapes, and mixing a color where it's the average of One side of the tree is the shadow and an average in the light. Cast shadow is, in this case, very similar in value as the shadow side of the tree. Part of it is because it's so distant. You're not going to see a huge distinction between the two values of form and cast. So going to here do the same thing on this other tree shape. Go along and just find the shapes. Try and simplify an area, this area back here, because it's as you can see, it's quite busy. Let's go in and now clean up those shadows. So you just knock back some of those values in there. Again, it's those textures that really cause things to not have the strong form. Now here I'm going and into this bush. This is quite solid as far as the foliage goes, so I don't have to do as much editing, but I'm going to take that and make it a little rounder here in a minute. But I want to make sure and get a really nice soft edge, and that will really round that form. There we go. All right, same thing with these shadow areas. I'm looking, just at that shadow shape and just keeping it nice and solid, without textures in it, little variations in color. But right on the edge, just like I did on the melon, add a little bit of the blue. Just trying to get the right color. So this is an opportunity to show the influence of the sky in the piece. You see it more when you're painting from life. It's hard for the camera to pick up and see that subtlety there. Okay, now I'd like to, on the shadow side here, there's a lot of different values and stuff because of the local color, like the bricks on the side of the roof. I just want to take those out. Maybe average the color of the roof a little bit more. So by averaging that color, simplifying it, taking out some of the details, even taking out these windows, that allows me to really think about the bigger shapes and the forms, just how light's falling on things. So don't worry about the details. You want to see how light is working, and look at the big angles, big planes. See, I'm not going to do the whole scene, but you can compare it with the left-hand side. That it still has that, without all those details, it still has that really strong quality of reality, just because we're dealing with big light and shadow shapes. So we don't miss those details. It actually becomes easier to process. So just reinforce and reform that shadow shape there. Take out these windows, this detail. Okay, let's do a little bit on the roof here. Okay, then we've got that nice quality, that nice roundness there. Let's look at a Hansen Puttoff painting and just see how he's done it too. See, he's got those shadow areas. He's not painting individual leaves, but painting the clumps. He's backing off on that, and as it goes back in space, they get even simpler. And you can see there's more saturation with the color, so you can think about that a little bit more. There are slight variations and it goes cooler, but it's really about those round forms. You see that melon, there's that round form, and you got that sense of light to it. Okay, I want to take a moment here and talk about the different types of lighting scenarios that we may encounter, and I'm going to just talk about a couple of the real main ones. There are also some oddball ones out there like moonlight and stuff like that, but what I want to focus on is the majority of us are going to spend most of our artistic lives in these three areas. We are going to, this is more of a midday sort of feel, or somewhere between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. We're going to have this kind of lighting scenario. This is overcast light, and then we'll have that evening sunset light. This could also be like early morning as well. There are some differences, but for the most part, this deals with a later time of day. So let's talk about the differences between the three. So first of all, you can see the tones here are much cooler in the overcast light, much warmer in the evening light, and here things are somewhere in between warm and cool. It's not super warm, but it's not cold either. We have very crisp cast shadows. So when we have really bright sunlight, we have a lot of contrast. So this type of lighting scenario, a ton of contrast, and so we need to be really thoughtful and judicious how we set up the paintings. We have to really think about, our shadow shapes and their size and relationship with the light shapes. Okay, here in an overcast light, the values are much closer together, but the local color and local value is being revealed more. Everything's softer. You can see here, it's because of the local value. This is a light object against this darker water and the dark sky. You can see that the contrast is created because of the actual inherent value of each of the objects. And here the contrast is created, this light side, shadow side of the same object, and also this nice dark cast shadow against the ground plane. That's where the contrast is created. So in this situation, we're looking for, again, light and shadow shapes, and also the relationship. We do have warmth here, and this gets a little bit cooler, by no means cold. We see a lot more temperature difference in the sunset evening light. So we have things that go much more orange when they're being hit by the sun. The sun's burning through a lot more atmosphere. It's at a lower angle to the ground, and so it's also not only warmer, but the shadows are not as sharp. They're a lot more diffuse because the sun has to burn through more atmosphere. It's not as bright as a situation like this where we get really crisp edges. The other thing, so with this, we get this with the light, a lot of warmth. So actually the entire scene is warmer than we see in these two scenarios. Look at the just temperature of the water. Even though it's a dark color, we can't really discern the exact color it is. It's certainly a lot warmer. There's a lot more browns and umbers in this scene, in every mixture that we're going to make, than here, where we're going to have a lot more grays and blues that are being influenced by the overcast light here. And so that will be in our mixtures. Grays and blues will go into each of our mixtures here, and some warm tones will go into all the mixtures here. This will have a lot of influence of the gray sky. And the sky in an overcast, we just get a little sliver of it here, but it's a lot lighter than we see in the sunset evening or in the blue sky of a bright sunny day. So that lightness also will have some influence in each of the colors here. And here we don't have, everything is soft for the most part. Soft edges. We have, if there is a hard edge, it's a dark object like here against a light object, and it's mostly because of the local objects that are creating the hard edges. But here, the light, for instance, this crisp edge between light and shadow, really crisp edge, crisp contrast that we don't see here. And here it's a little bit more soft. This is cast shadow coming through here and here, but it's a little bit more diffuse. It's a little softer. Even this area that's lit by light, and that is dark, it's a little bit softer edge, whereas here we get a much sharper edge between light side and shadow side there. Those are a couple things to think about when we're setting up in different light scenarios. What we're mostly going to be working with is this sort of scenario because it's the most common, and probably we can learn a lot about just how light and shadow works, form and cast shadows by doing this scenario. But I just didn't want to not talk about some of these other lighting scenarios as well, because I will be doing some demos in overcast light and also in sunset light.